Hello.
Stream Elements says, Old Mage Guy is now live. Streaming Just Chatting, ice equals hate.
I would say good morning, but or afternoon, whatever. There's nothing good. Except maybe that we're still here, and then that's still got some double-sidedness. So, a lot of shit been going on. I don't mean with me. I got stuff to deal with too. I've got to make it through today and tomorrow. Yeah. I did not ask you for that. Yeah, today and tomorrow. And then I can get some meds, hopefully. I should have this for Monday. And then Dad's acting like a piece of shit. To the point I'm about ready to just fucking straight up call him out on the shit. I am about fed up with it. Straight up. I was left 6 cigarettes when they left this morning. I had one before he went back to bed. There was 5 left at that point. I got up almost 1 this afternoon, and there was 4 of them in the pack, and the fan was off. Which just made me go, oh. So, instead of smoking one of your own cigarettes, you decided to sit there and take one from me, even though you know I'm going to be limited on them for the day. Thanks, fuckhead.
A little more than a week ago.
Oh. I wanted you guys to see this. I wanted people to know what's going on, because this is bullshit. And I'm understating that. It's more than bullshit. It's un-American. Period. And when you see the clip, you'll know what I'm talking about. You won't even question it. You will not question that that's what I was talking about. This is not shit that should be happening in America. Period.
Video came to light of ICE officers in full camo, rifles drawn, using a battering ram to enter a home in Minneapolis. And as a woman confronted them at the door, she could be heard saying, "What warrant?" That was her question. Here's the clip.
What warrant? Wait! Nobody in here but my babies. Sugar, stay in your room and shut the door. Sis, I'm not even touching nobody. Get your hands off of me.
That's an African American gentleman. These people aren't immigrants.
Thanks to a whistleblower report.
Those people aren't immigrants whatsoever. So how motherfuckers gonna be sitting there saying it's only immigrants being targeted? Bitch fucking please. You wanna sit there and say that shit? There's a giant rusty spike you can go sit on. They're do not have judicial warrants. They are breaking down doors and entering places illegally and illegally taking people. So, yeah, no. No, that's fucking un-American. That is terrorism. 100 fucking percent. That is fucking Nazi forces going around doors. That is the exact same thing the fucking SS did. You want Nazis? That's how you fucking get Nazis. How fucking stupid does someone have to be to think that shit's okay? How fucking deranged and mentally disturbed do you have to be to think that shit's okay?
That was first reported by the Associated Press. We might know a little bit about the background of that video. ICE agents apparently, all the way back to May of 2025, have been instructed, contrary to the text of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, that an administrative warrant is good enough. An agency warrant is good enough to enter someone's home. You don't need a warrant signed by a judge. That's according to a 15-page report with several pages of exhibits filed by Whistleblower Aid and first reported by the Associated Press, anonymizing two whistleblowers who came to them and revealed this memo, the existence of this memo that may have been put into use across the country, from Minneapolis to Texas. Here's what the report reads under the section, the gravamen of the disclosure. By memorandum dated May 12th, 2025, Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons authorizes ICE agents to forcibly enter into certain people's homes without a judicial warrant, consent, or an emergency. Specifically, in a May 12th memo, the Acting ICE Director authorized ICE agents to rely on a Form I-205, which is not a judicial warrant, to enter the residence of an alien subject to a final order of deportation without consent, including by a necessary and reasonable amount of force. And here's what it says about how widely this was disseminated. It says it was addressed to, this memo, I'm going to put it up on the screen.
Hold on before we get a little further. For those who might not know what the word disseminated means, it means to be distributed or spread amongst a group. It's... Think of it as almost like dissolving something into the water, except you can still visibly see what was dissolved. It's there, there's no questions it's there. But it is what it is. Crouch, crouch, crouch. Thanks for listening, you son of a bitch. And what am I getting hit by? Ah, finally! You load in, you fucking piece of shit. Bethesda, this is fucking ridiculous. What the fuck? Why the hell is that happening? And I'm stuck in my own goddamn room. This bear's fucking beating shit out of my shit. And of course, the fucking ally can't help. Are you... Yeah, a lot of help you are, you fucking punk. I've got to move my fucking shit. So I don't want people spawning in that goddamn room. Excuse me? Why are you healing like that, you son of a bitch? Okay, Bethesda, this is bullshit. Spawn killed when I fucking spawn in. And then you allow the bear to sit there and spawn camp my shit.
The memo was addressed to all ICE personnel, but according to this report, it was not formally distributed to all personnel. It was instead, quote, the May 12th memo has been provided to select DHS officials who are then directed to verbally brief the new policy for action. Those supervisors then show the memo to some employees, like our clients, referring to the attorneys who wrote this memo, and direct them to read the memo and return it to the supervisor.
Now, as a Star Trek fan myself, I've actually played Star Trek Fleet Command a couple of times over the years, either alone or with my live stream community. Star Trek
lawyers in this memo call that consciousness of guilt, that they realize that this legal theory doesn't hold up and they are hiding this memo despite addressing it to all ICE agents. Quote, it appears that the acting ICE director has authorized the very conduct that DHS in 2025 legal training materials citing Supreme Court precedent has called, quote, the chief evil against which the wording of the Fourth Amendment is directed. Physical entry of a home without consent or a proper warrant. Based upon information and belief, newly hired ICE agents, many of whom do not have law enforcement background, are now being directed to rely solely on Form I-205 to enter a home without consent to conduct arrests. In fact, our client at DHS understands that instructors at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center are directed to verbally train all new ICE agents to follow this policy while disregarding written course material instructing the opposite. Potentially, scores of ICE agents will be emboldened to unlawfully enter private residences, which include private residences of U.S. citizens. And this memo, this report, shows some of the written training that this conflicts with what had been the standard ICE training, because before May 2025, ICE understood the text of the Fourth Amendment. The U.S. Constitution prohibited these activities. This is from the ICE Fugitive Operations Handbook from 2023. Quote, neither a warrant for arrest of an alien nor a warrant of removal authorizes officers to enter the residence or anywhere else where the target has a reasonable expectation of privacy. It says a little bit later, therefore, without a criminal warrant, officers must obtain voluntary consent before entering a residence or area where there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. Again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. The authors of this whistleblower report say that the fact, this system of verbally conveying the contents of this memo while saying, this is for distribution to all ICE officers, but it's only being shown to a select few, it's being very closely held, that this is consciousness of guilt. That's under the subheading right here, an opaque and secret memorandum with threats of reprisal. Quote, despite the May 12th memo being addressed to all ICE personnel, in practice, the memo has only been distributed to select DHS and ICE officials. Furthermore, our clients have been told that the May 12th memo must be treated with unusually strict access control for a document without any confidentiality markings. I'm going to put that memo on the screen. You will see that there isn't any, the one that they have appended as an exhibit to this memo, there are no markings anywhere that would suggest that this is confidential. They put it right at the end of their report, and it doesn't say any reason why it should be treated secretly unless they knew that they were violating the text of the Constitution. They write, quote, one of our clients was allowed to view the memorandum only in the presence of their supervisor. They were handed the memorandum, allowed a few minutes to review it without the ability to take notes, and were directed to hand it back. They were also informed that another employee had been reassigned for contradicting a supervisor about a different ICE policy. Our client understood their supervisor shared this piece of information as a warning that expressing disagreement with the new arrest policy could result in adverse career consequences. Now, this was, you can see on this memo, I'm gonna put it on the screen. On the left-hand side, it says redacted for Congress. This whistleblower, represented by attorneys, is sharing this story with Congress. So this account, and we might see movement on Capitol Hill with this, and this comes to light at a time when ICE agents are going into people's homes, including the homes of U.S. citizens in Minneapolis, that ICE operations have started in Maine, and they are saying that there has been a cover-up since May 2025 of a policy that they knew conflicted with their training, they knew conflicted with the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, and conflicted with their own training manual. I'm going to read from the 2025 Department of Homeland Security training manual that is quoted in this report. It reads, quote, for that reason, entering a home to arrest a person without a judicial warrant or an exception to the warrant requirement is typically a violation of the Fourth Amendment, regardless of whether the officer has probable cause to arrest the suspect. An officer who enters a person's home to make an arrest must have a warrant, consent, or exigent circumstances.
Creators, take these 3 apps I built to run my business made with Base 44. They're ready for you as free-to-use templates in the link below. Let's talk productivity. As a one-man show, I have to handle everything myself, so missing a task isn't an option. I built a scheduling calendar to manage my content, and I added reminders for all the little tasks that keep things moving. Second, my community. I built a content hub where I share free assets, gather leads, and even host paid memberships. Then I added a booking system so people can schedule one-on-one calls with me. Easy. And third, creative ideation, a hub that lets the AI develop my core ideas. One section for brainstorm.
As I record this video, just last night, an appellate court had put an administrative stay on a ruling by a lower court where a judge had ordered the government not to retaliate against protesters based on their protected speech, limited when the government can use tear gas on protesters, restricted the use of tear gas. That ruling is now paused while that's under appellate review. This is now new evidence in support of the protesters' case. This is almost certainly going to make waves on Capitol Hill. I'm just wanting to give a rundown of this because I'm reaching out to Whistleblower Aid, the group that had issued this report, to see if we can get some follow-up on this. This is an explosive memo, and there's going to be real reverberations on Capitol Hill, almost certainly in court cases around the country. And keep posted here. We'll see whether there'll be any real accountability for this. But this is not the end of this story. Put a pin on it and stay tuned for what happens next. For more on this and other stories, visit www.allrisenews.com. That's www.allrisenews.com. And to make sure that you don't miss the next video on this and other topics, take a moment to subscribe right now to Legal AF.
Can't get your
I didn't end up being here yesterday, so there's a few that we need to go. Yeah, that was quite the gap. Honestly, I don't care about their panic. The answer to that question is a resounding no.
another major victory for the Democrats about congressional maps and congressional redistricting. Looks like Nicole Maliotakis, who is the only Republican who represents any district in New York City, is about to lose her seat because a Supreme Court justice in New York, Justice Perlman, says so, says the maps that were used to put her in her chair to represent just apparently Staten Island violate racial profiling laws and the New York Constitution. He's ordered new maps by the 6th of February. That's another +1 for the Democrats, which is important. We need to accumulate all of these seats in order to stop other red states from redistricting, redrawing lines, and getting rid of blue seats and black and brown representation. We got to counter it by bulking up in the blue states and picking up more seats. And based on this decision I'll cover with you right now, that looks like it's going to happen in New York. I'm Michael Popak. You're on Legal AF. Let's get to the new 18-page order. It's already getting attacked, of course, by the Republicans and, of course, by Nicole Maliotakis. She just wants to really represent the almost entirely white Staten Island. But by joining Staten Island with a section of Brooklyn, what it's done is it has violated, according to the judge, the New York Constitution and violated also federal and constitutional law about racial redistricting and racial maps, which cannot be done. Ones that focus on concentrating political power are okay under this United States Supreme Court combination of judges, but not to try to dilute the power of minorities. Here's what the New York State Constitution says about this, that the judge relied on. When drawing district lines, Article 3 of the New York State Constitution says, the commission shall consider whether such lines would result in the denial or abridgment of racial or language minority voting rights, and districts shall not be drawn to have the purpose of, nor shall they result in the denial of abridgment of such rights. Districts shall be drawn so that based on the totality of the circumstances, racial or minority language groups do not have less opportunity to participate in the political process. What the judge has ruled is that the petitioners who have come to his courtroom have shown that both overt and subtle racial appeals are common in campaigns in the Congressional District 11. In other words, they purposely go after the white voter and try to deny the rights of black and brown people in the Staten Island area. They've also shown, according to the judge on page 9, through testimony and data, that the history of discrimination against minority voters in the congressional district still impacts those communities today. They said that Staten Island has a long history of racial discrimination, that an expert witness from NYU testified that Staten Island has a long history of racial segregation, discrimination, and disparate treatment against black and Latinos. It was the subject of intense redlining, a process in which the federal government enforced segregation by drawing race-based lines around neighborhoods to ensure that black people would not be allowed to obtain loans or mortgages. And this still goes on in Staten Island, and now it must come to an end. And the impact, according to the judge's review of the experts, is not only social and economic, but political as well, as black, Latino, and Asian Staten Islanders' political representation and participation still lags behind white Staten Islanders. Can't just have a little Staten Island, little white, little lily pad, and just have little Nicole Maliotakis there representing it. That's not how the U.S. Constitution works. That's certainly not how the New York Constitution works, based on all the evidence that was before the judge. Now, what's going to happen next? There's a case that's up at the United States Supreme Court. We're waiting for a ruling. It's the Calais case about a Louisiana map, in which the Supreme Court is thought that they're going to give clearer direction about what type of redistricting is permitted under the Constitution. So some of the bases for this decision might come into question based on the United States Supreme Court. Certainly, as of right now, the new maps have to be drawn by February 6th. That would give the Democrats a +1 in New York along with other maps that are being redrawn all at the same time. So a lot of shifting sands going on right now in the various congressional maps in and around New York City, for instance. But we've got politicians that are willing to move to different districts in order to make sure that Democrats are protected. This will now, what happens next, this will go up to the United States Supreme Court. First, it has to go through the regular process here. It'll go to the First Department Appellate Division, which is the first level of appeal for cases coming out of Manhattan. I'm a member of the First Department, sworn in there. There'll be a 5-judge panel there of justices, and from there up to the Court of Appeals in New York. Once it's at the Court of Appeals in New York, then, depending upon the ruling there, there's going to be an appeal to the United States Supreme Court. I think that's where we're ultimately heading. I'm not sure we're going to get there in time for it to impact the midterms. I hope so. Certainly the judge's order contemplates that these new maps will be used for the midterms. We'll continue to follow it all right here on Legal AF and on the Midas Touch Network. We've talked about the California redistricting, Prop 50, creating 5 new Democratic seats, and the fact that even though that's been challenged, it's likely that the United States Supreme Court will not overturn the California map. Already, appellate courts have denied any attempt to take away those 5 new seats. Texas's 5 new seats for Republicans are going to continue to be used because the Supreme Court said it was okay for them to be used, and California's as well. So many states are waiting to see what the United States Supreme Court's going to do. We're waiting for this major voting rights decision to come out. We're already about 60 days or so past the oral argument, and still no voting rights decision has come out yet. If it doesn't come out soon, like in February, maybe March, the chances of that decision at the Supreme Court impacting the maps for this midterm is becoming almost impossible if it doesn't come out soon. And what's the delay? Well, the majority opinion, which will likely take away a lot of voting rights and undermine the Voting Rights Act, is probably already written by the MAGA 6 majority. I'd be shocked if they don't have 6 votes among the right wing of the Supreme Court. But in order for that decision to be publicly released and dropped, there have to be the concurrences and the dissents. And if Ketanji Brown Jackson and Kagan and Justice Sotomayor are in dissent, there's no incentive for them to hurry up and finish their dissent. They're still working on it, and when they're done, they're done. So my guess is there's some foot dragging going on over at the United States Supreme Court to make sure that the Voting Rights Act decision doesn't come out until way late in the game so that it can't be used at the midterms. If that's the case, then this map, this order too, unless the Supreme Court blocks it soon, they will not interfere here either, because they say it'll be too close to the election under a doctrine that they use about proximity to the election time and the Supreme Court getting involved with politics. So the bottom line, this justice's decision in New York will go through 2 levels of appeal, maybe to the Supreme Court, depending upon timing. The Democrats are either going to pick up a new seat or they're not. And then Nicole Malliotakis is going to have to decide which district she's going to try to run in, as Staten Island is not going to be allowed to be all white, effectively diluting the racial powers or the powers of racial minorities or language-based minorities in New York. I'll continue to follow it all right here. You're on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button. Help us on Legal AF Substack as well, where you can become a paid member. So until my next report, this is Michael.
I'm Michael Popak, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder
The general strike and protests in Minnesota exceeded all expectations, and that general strike and those protests are spreading across the United States. We're seeing it now happen in other cities. We know the media is suppressing this, so we need to get this message out. You saw right there the protesters in Minneapolis. Now, the organizers estimated there would be approximately 50,000 people showing up to protest, which would be such an incredibly high number, especially considering it was like negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. But when I've been speaking to some of these organizers, they tell me that it could have been as many as 80,000 to 100,000 people peacefully protesting while this general strike was taking place, and businesses were shut down in Minnesota from Minneapolis to St. Paul. And we look eastward towards New York, where there was that powerful strike underway with the nurses in New York City. 15,000 striking nurses there, supported by the New York City mayor, I might add, Zoran Mamdani. Great to see that support from leadership, and we'd expect nothing less from Mayor Mamdani. And folks, I expect this general strike to start to spread across the country and these protests to continue across the country. Let's take a look at just some of the other images of this incredible peaceful protest that took place in Minneapolis. You see it right here. Here's another overhead image brought to you by A More Perfect Union right here. This is what people power looks like, and Americans are fed up. We were fed up before, but it's reached a fever pitch in the chilly negative 20 degree Fahrenheit weather in Minnesota. We're learning more stories about ICE abducting 5-year-olds. We talked about the story of Liam abducting 2-year-olds who were abducted after ICE agents deployed toxic, carcinogenic gas weapons at this 2-year-old and her family, also sending them to concentration camps in El Paso. There's more videos of ICE agents from Minneapolis to Portland, Maine on the East Coast, right, where the ICE agents are telling people who are peacefully protesting, well, we're now entering your face into a database because you're protesting us. You're now deemed a domestic terrorist by the regime. I'll show you that clip in a moment. You may have seen it elsewhere. But while all of this is taking place, what is Donald Trump and his dastardly regime do? What's Donald Trump posting today as the American people are fed up, as people can't afford homes, as people can't afford groceries, as people are having their health care ripped away from them, as people aren't able to access education, they can't access child care, as people are struggling, psychologically tortured, living paycheck to paycheck if they're lucky enough to get a paycheck. Donald Trump was posting images all day of golden arches that he wants to build in Washington, D.C., Arc de Trump memorials to himself, golden arches, golden ballrooms, and IndyCar racetracks. Donald Trump kept on sharing AI-generated videos showing an IndyCar race surrounding the Capitol building, and then his cabinet started chiming in, like Secretary Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary, goes, what's more American than a race around our nation's capital? Freedom. Democrats, start your engines and let's get this over the finish line, talking about bringing Indy 500 and UFC fights to Washington, D.C., while they have a budget for ICE and Border Patrol, Gestapo. What did they spend over the past, how many years? Hundreds of billions of dollars, and now they want billions of dollars more. It is absolutely despicable for any Democrat, for any person to support more money going to this terrorist organization that is ICE and that is the Border Patrol, Gestapo. In addition to posting IndyCar racing in Washington, D.C., you also have a Trump communications director lewdly posting that a Democratic influence, Harry Sisson, might enjoy being spanked by him. This is Stephen Chung right here, and he said that Harry Sisson, who's, I don't know how old Harry is, 22, 23 at this point, and Stephen Chung said he may like to get spanked by me. What is wrong with these deranged and sick individuals? Sarah Matthews, who used to work for the first Trump administration, posted this meme of a lady with her daughter saying, Trump, Independence Arch, and then you see another daughter drowning. Millions of Americans struggling under Donald Trump's economy. Folks, These peaceful protests were so large that even state regime media, which calls itself Fox News, couldn't deny the size and scale. Here's state regime media saying, well, at the end of the day, there's really a lot of people in Minneapolis, despite how cold it is. This is what they were saying on state regime. Here, play this clip.
So let's go back to another very, very cold place, but that is not stopping Minneapolis from turning out in huge numbers, in the thousands, we're told, into the streets where it is 10 below this hour.
I don't envy your job right now.
We've destroyed an enemy cruiser.
On one.
Now, one of the things that we were also learning, and this was reported on CNN as well, is that Department of Homeland Security officials do not want FEMA and other emergency services within the federal government to refer to the conditions, the deadly conditions that are taking over the East Coast right now, as being ice or as having ice factors. Instead, they want to refer to ice as freezing rain, because they think that people will use their words to refer to ice storms as memes to attack the ICE and Border Patrol. Let's listen to this. Here, play this clip.
You also have some interesting reporting on guidance that FEMA was given about messaging for the storm.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. So I've learned that Homeland Security officials have come to FEMA staff and told them to limit the use of the word ICE in their public messaging and social media posts when talking about the storm. The concern is obviously the connection between the immigration enforcement that's happening across the country, particularly in Minnesota. And what they are worried about here is that by posting something like, watch out for the ice, that it's going to become an opportunity for a meme, for internet fodder, for public ridicule against the Department of Homeland Security. So they're asking FEMA staff, if you can, don't use the word ice, try to use the term freezing rain. But part of the problem here, as I talk to agency officials about this, is they're saying what we're talking about is ice. And what we're talking about is saving lives.
Yeah, no, when you say freezing rain, that makes me think, oh, I'll put on a raincoat. It doesn't make me think ice.
Right, and what we're largely talking about, and I'm not a forecaster, but this is largely an ice event. And a lot of states that I've talked to are saying what we're preparing for is destructive ice that could damage power grids, cut power to a lot of homes and wreak havoc on roads, and it is pretty remarkable that Homeland Security is saying, please try to avoid using that word.
Because they're afraid of memes. Meanwhile, lives are on the line. Another incredibly idiotic story. Thanks so much.
And Jessica Tarlov, we love Jessica Tarlov on the Midas Touch Network, the only good reporter at Fox. She stated the facts of Donald Trump's completely disastrous polling numbers, and she let all the other people on the panel know the truth. Great work, Jessica Tarlov. Let's play this clip.
New York Times Santa poll was so bad for him that he's suing the New York Times. Lowest approval rating, -17 immigration, -18 on the economy, -19 on foreign relations, -29 on cost of living. And for those of you that care about the Epstein files, which is a lot of people, -44. The coalition from 2020 is back intact. So young voters, black voters, Latino voters, back to usual levels of support for the Democratic Party. And J.D. Vance's speechwriter, I think, hates him because he was talking about the economy. And he had this line, you don't turn the Titanic around overnight. But we all know what happened to the Titanic.
Oof.
Oof.
You do.
Sick burn.
Also, the Trump regime was posting photos today of Donald Trump with a penguin and a penguin's AI image, and the AI image of the penguin was holding an American flag, and you see a Greenlandic flag as well, except there are no penguins in Greenland. All penguins live in the southern hemisphere except one species in the Galapagos Islands. As Patriot Takes points out, perhaps you shouldn't have dismantled the Department of Education so quickly when you're making these posts about Greenland, maybe you just need to know a few things like there's no penguins there. This is just the idiocracy combined with the depravity and the dangerousness of this regime. Rod Stewart, by the way, chimed in about Donald Trump being a draft dodger. And, you know, Donald Trump attacked the service of our NATO allies, UK, Denmark, France, Canada, others, who provided troops to fight alongside the United States in Afghanistan. And Trump said, no one really fought with the United States in Afghanistan. They pretended to be on the front lines. It's basically Trump calling the troops of UK, Denmark, and others suckers and losers. But we know that that's who Donald Trump is, a 5-time draft dodger, a coward himself, someone who has zero respect for service. Take it away, Rod Stewart. Play this clip.
I have great respect for our armed forces that fought and gave us our freedom. So it hurts me badly, deeply, when I read that the draft dodger Trump has criticized our troops in Afghanistan for not being on the front line. We lost over 400 of our guys. Think of their parents. Think about it. And Trump calls them almost like cowards. It's unbearable. So
No
I'm
offense,
calling
my
on
friend.
you, Prime Minister Starmer and Farage, please make the draft dodger Trump apologize. Please.
But according to Stephen Miller, Donald Trump's Goebbels, or whatever you want to call him, again, I'm just giving my opinion, right? I give my First Amendment speech opinion. This is all opinion speech. Stephen Miller, by the way, says that what you saw in Davos, Switzerland, it was a masterclass in diplomacy. This is how you do diplomacy. This is how you do diplomacy. Donald Trump shamed the United States. The rest of the world is horrified. Putin's the only one who's laughing as he's meeting Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff today that the NATO bond has been so severed by Donald Trump's utter depravity and incompetence. But here's what Stephen Miller said. Play this clip.
Well, you saw a masterclass, a true, amazing masterclass in diplomacy, statesmanship, leadership in Davos this week with President Trump. First, to your point, his critique of Europe in his Davos speech was one of the most important statements any American president has made about that continent in memory. Europe has...
Oh, and then we heard from Nikema Armstrong, the leader of the protests at the church in St. Paul. Donald Trump had her arrested, then did AI memes of her crying, manipulating her face, making her skin look blacker as well, and making her cry. Just complete judicial impropriety by the Trump regime to do that. We heard Nikema speak. Let's play this clip.
So we followed all of the steps, but they treated this as if I was a fugitive on the run, that I had committed murder. And they're doing all this, putting all these resources into tracking down one black woman when they will put zero resources into holding Jonathan Ross accountable, the ICE agent who killed Renee Good. Let's not forget that fact. He's still roaming around free.
They say memories are the essence of who we are.
Should also be noted, too, that today the Trump regime posted this photo while they're covering up the Epstein files. Trump signs the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act into law to help victims of human trafficking reclaim their lives. By the way, Donald Trump did not do a signing ceremony in public because he wanted to avoid questions about his cover-up of a child sex trafficking ring. I mean, Trump is covering up child sex trafficking right now. He is a pedo protector right now. Undisputed fact that he is, because, in my opinion, that's what you get when you cover up the Epstein files, the way he and Pam Bondi and his despicable DOJ are. And by the way, that bill was sitting on his desk to be signed into law for the past 10, 11 days, and he's been doing nothing about it at all. I want to leave you with this as well, though. I'll do a whole other video on Trump's Epstein cover-up. But take a look at this. This is agents in Maine photographed a civilian's face and name and said, this was a protester, and said, we are now putting you in a database because we're treating you as a domestic terrorist. Here, play this clip right here.
What you guys are doing here? Yeah, look at them.
Look at that. The ICC is us. Be careful. Be careful. Be over here.
It's not illegal to record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Why are you taking my information down?
Because we have a nice little database.
Oh, good.
And now you're considered a domestic terrorist. So
We're videotaping you? Are you crazy?
That's what ICE is. That's what the Border Patrol Gestapo is. It's so utterly despicable. Everybody hit subscribe. Help us get to 6 million. We gratefully appreciate your support. Thank you all so much.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MidasPlus.com.
Welcome to a
I did not want you to do that, no. Your autoplay bullshit is not something I've asked you to do.
We got another major victory for the Democrats about congressional maps and congressional redistricting. Looks like Nicole Maliotakis, who is the only Republican who represents any district in New York City, is about to lose her seat because a Supreme Court justice in New York, Justice Perlman, says so, says the maps that were used to put her in her chair to represent just apparently Staten Island violate racial profiling laws and the New York Constitution. He's ordered new maps by the 6th of February. That's another +1 for the Democrats, which is important. We need to accumulate all of these seats in order to stop other red states from redistricting, redrawing lines, and getting rid of blue seats and black and brown representation. We got to counter it by bulking up in the blue states and picking up more seats. And based on this decision I'll cover with you right now, that looks like it's going to happen in New York. I'm Michael Popak. You're on Legal AF. Let's get to the new 18-page order. It's already getting attacked, of course, by the Republicans and, of course, by Nicole Maliotakis. She just wants to really represent the almost entirely white Staten Island, but by joining Staten Island with a section of Brooklyn, what it's done is it has violated, according to the judge, the New York Constitution and violated also federal and constitutional law about racial redistricting and racial maps, which cannot be done. Ones that focus on concentrating political power are okay under this United States Supreme Court combination of judges, but not to try to dilute the power of minorities. Here's what the New York State Constitution says about this, that the judge relied on. When drawing district lines, Article 3 of the New York State Constitution says, the commission shall consider whether such lines would result in the denial or abridgment of racial or language minority voting rights, and districts shall not be drawn to have the purpose of, nor shall they result in the denial of, abridgment of such rights. Districts shall be drawn so that, based on the totality of the circumstances, racial or minority language groups do not have less opportunity to participate in the political process. What the judge has ruled is that the petitioners who have come to his courtroom have shown that both overt and subtle racial appeals are common in campaigns in the Congressional District 11. In other words, they purposely go after the white voter and try to deny the rights of black and brown people in the Staten Island area. They've also shown, according to the judge on page 9, through testimony and data, that the history of discrimination against minority voters in the congressional district still impacts those communities today. They said that Staten Island has a long history of racial discrimination, that an expert witness from NYU testified that Staten Island has a long history of racial segregation, discrimination, and disparate treatment against black and Latinos. It was the subject of intense redlining. a process in which the federal government enforced segregation by drawing race-based lines around neighborhoods to ensure that black people would not be allowed to obtain loans or mortgages. And this still goes on in Staten Island, and now it must come to an end. And the impact, according to the judge's review of the experts, is not only social and economic, but political as well, as Black, Latino, and Asian Staten Islanders' political representation and participation still lags behind white Staten Islanders. Can't just have a little Staten Island, little white, little lily pad, and just have little Nicole Malliotakis there representing it. That's not how the U.S. Constitution works. That's certainly not how the New York Constitution works, based on all the evidence that was before the judge. Now, what's going to happen next? There's a case that's up at the United States Supreme Court. We're waiting for a ruling.
Yes.
It's the Calais out of Louisiana map, in which the Supreme Court is thought that they're going to give clearer direction about what type of redistricting is permitted under the Constitution. So some of the bases for this decision might come into question based on the United States Supreme Court. Certainly, as of right now, the new maps have to be drawn by February 6th. That would give the Democrats a +1 in New York, along with other maps that are being redrawn all at the same time. A lot of shifting sands going on right now in the various congressional maps in and around New York City, for instance. But we've got politicians that are willing to move to different districts in order to make sure that Democrats are protected. This will now, what happens next? This will go up to the United States Supreme Court. First, it has to go through the regular process here. It'll go to the First Department Appellate Division, which is the first level of appeal for cases coming out of Manhattan. I'm a member of the First Department, sworn in there. There'll be a 5-judge panel there of justices, and from there up to the Court of Appeals in New York. Once it's at the Court of Appeals in New York, then, depending upon the ruling there going to be an appeal to the United States Supreme Court. I think that's where we're ultimately heading. I'm not sure we're going to get there in time for it to impact the midterms. I hope so. Certainly the judge's order contemplates that these new maps will be used for the midterms. We'll continue to follow it all right here on Legal AF and on the Midas Touch Network. We've talked about the California redistricting, Prop 50, creating 5 new Democratic seats, and the fact that even though that's been challenged, it's likely that the United States Supreme Court will not overturn the California map. Already, appellate courts have denied any attempt to take away those 5 new seats. Texas's 5 new seats for Republicans are going to continue to be used because the Supreme Court said it was okay for them to be used, and California's as well. So many states are waiting to see what the United States Supreme Court's going to do. We're waiting for this major voting rights decision to come out. We're already about 60 days or so past the oral argument, and still no voting rights decision has come out yet. If it doesn't come out soon, like in February, maybe March, the chances of that decision at the Supreme Court impacting the maps for this midterm is becoming almost impossible if it doesn't come out soon. And what's the delay? Well, the majority opinion, which will likely take away a lot of voting rights and undermine the Voting Rights Act, is probably already written by the MAGA 6 majority. I'd be shocked if they don't have 6 votes among the right wing of the Supreme Court. But in order for that decision to be publicly released and dropped, there have to be the concurrences and the dissents. And if Ketanji Brown Jackson and Kagan and Justice Sotomayor are in dissent, there's no incentive for them to hurry up and finish their dissent. They're still working on it, and when they're done, they're done. So my guess is there's some foot dragging going on over at the United States Supreme Court to make sure that the Voting Rights Act decision doesn't come out until way late in the game, so that it can't be used at the midterms. If that's the case, then this map, this order too, unless the Supreme Court blocks it soon, they will not interfere here either, because they say it'll be too close to the election under a doctrine that they use about proximity to the election time and the Supreme Court getting involved with politics. So the bottom line, this justice's decision in New York will go through 2 levels of appeal, maybe to the Supreme Court, depending upon timing. The Democrats are either going to pick up a new seat or they're not. And then Nicole Malliotakis is going to have to decide which district she's going to try to run in, as Staten Island is not going to be allowed to be all white, effectively diluting the racial powers or the powers of racial minorities or language-based minorities in New York. I'll continue to follow it all right here. You're on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button. Help us on Legal AF Substack as well, where you can become a paid member. So until my next report, this is Michael.
I'm Michael Popak, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF.
Donald Trump's depraved dark past is surfacing, and Donald Trump is freaking out and trying to cover up. So Donald Trump goes to his old playbook. Who does he bring in? Bill Barr, his former attorney general, who covered up the Mueller report and put out all of those lies to preempt the Mueller report. Bill Barr, who found out about egregious behavior of Donald Trump in Italy and then covered that up and squashed investigations arising out of the Mueller report. Yep, Bill Barr penned an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal defending Donald Trump and the DOJ. Donald Trump going right into his old playbook. I'll talk about that in a moment. But part of that playbook, again, the utter deceit and treachery and double speak of the authoritarian, while Donald Trump and his DOJ are clearly covering up right now a child sex trafficking ring. Folks, these are pedo protectors. Donald Trump and the entire MAGA GOP. You know what Donald Trump did at the end of this week and what he posted? He posted that he signed into law a Trafficking Survivors Relief Act while he's covering up a child sex trafficking ring. Notably, he did not hold a press conference for the signing of this law, which he's done every other major law that he signed, and this is a major one. But notice there was no press around this one. It was a bipartisan bill, the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act, that he signed. But he did post it on social media. He goes from the White House account. President Trump has signed the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act to help victims of human trafficking reclaim their lives. This law allows victims to file motions to vacate their convictions and expunge their arrest records for certain criminal offenses. I think we all view that law as something positive, but the fact that Donald Trump is using it to say, look, I'm stand with the victims of sex trafficking while he's covering up a child sex trafficking ring is utterly despicable in my mind. Also, you have California Governor Gavin Newsom, as Donald Trump was attacking him, posting this AI image of Donald Trump signing that 50th birthday letter that Donald Trump signed for Jeffrey Epstein back in 2003 that the Wall Street Journal reported on. But talking about the Wall Street Journal, which is still owned by Rupert Murdoch, you have Bill Barr, Donald Trump's former attorney general, wrote the following op-ed to help Donald Trump cover up his dark past. This is what Bill Barr just published on Friday. why Pam Bondi didn't publish all the Epstein files in 30 days. The answer is simple. It was not possible. Let me read for you what Bill Barr says, and then let me very quickly debunk it for you. Bill Barr goes, House Democrats, aided by a handful of misguided Republicans, forced passage of the Epstein Transparency Act in November. Let's pause there. Misguided? What is misguided about the fact that the Trump regime said they would release the files? They said they were on Pam Bondi's desk back in February. They had 1,000 DOJ and FBI officials working overtime, I might add, from March to May, claiming they were reviewing the files, and then they lied about it to try to cover it all up. What is misguided about transparency when it comes to child sex trafficking, Bill Barr? Then Bill Barr goes, the statute, by the way, didn't Bill Barr's dad was like the dean of the school where Epstein worked at? Anyway, Bill Barr goes on to say, the statute directed Attorney General to release publicly in electronic form with certain redactions all unclassified materials related to the Jeffrey Epstein case within 30 days. This has required review of more than 5 million pages of material in linear feet, more than 3 times the height of the Washington Monument. Ms. Bondi and her team at the Justice Department have done a commendable job. Contrary to the fulmination of critics, they have faithfully implemented the laws as expeditiously as possible, given the Herculean effort involved. They've released 1%. They could be releasing documents on what's called a rolling basis in batches of 50,000 or 100,000. As they review 50, make the redactions, make it public. They're not doing that. Also, we know that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel tipped Donald Trump off to the fact that his name appeared in it multiple times in very bad ways back in May. Also, Pam Bondi said that they were reviewing this back in February, and it was on her desk. And they have 1,000 lawyers reviewing this from March to May of 2025. And they claim they have 500 lawyers who have been reviewing it recently. So they have 1,500 to 2,000 lawyers and FBI agents going through one case of 5 million documents. Don't try to deceive people, Bill Barr. When I was a litigator, and you deceive people for your whole life, Bill Barr, you're despicable. But when I was a litigator and I handled cases that had 5-7 terabytes, which is more than the linear size that you just listed, with the less electronic discovery software back then, less technologically significant software back then, it took me and a team of 5 associates about 60 to 75 days to go through all of the files of 5 to 7 terabytes. And you may go, well, the Epstein law was 30 days. The issue about the Epstein Transparency Act was that Bondi said she had it on her desk in February, then March, then April, then May, then June, then July, then August, then September, then October, then November, then December. They basically had a full year to go about this, Bill Barr. So stop acting like this was just 30 days. Okay, and there were previous document reviews done by SDNY and by the Southern District of Florida. It wasn't like this DOJ had to review it for the first time. Oh, wait, they fired everybody who was involved in the Epstein case as part of their cover-up. So they had nobody working at the DOJ who even knew the files because Trump wanted to fire Maureen Comey, James Comey's daughter, who was the lead prosecutor against Epstein and Ghislaine, but I digress. It goes on to say, this has required review of more than 5 million pages, more taller than the Washington Monument. So what? Stop acting like that. That's not a lot of documents in the legal world for people who handle big document productions. Miss Bondi and her team at the Justice Department done a commendable job in releasing the first installment of documents in December. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche noted that the practical demands of the review process made it impossible to release all materials within 30 days. He said the department was working as fast as possible and would release the rest of the files on a rolling basis. Well, right there, let me fact check you. A rolling basis means rolling basis. If that was the case, why not every day 50,000 documents, 50,000 documents, 25,000 documents, heck, 5,000 documents? There hasn't been any documents released over the past 3 weeks. More lies, more lies. And then Bill Barr's like, but that wasn't good enough for the critics, some of whom are claiming that Miss Bondi has flouted the law. Anyone familiar with the realities of document production of this magnitude would understand the 30-day deadline was patently unreasonable. The upfront work needed to prepare the staggering volume of material for review collecting everything responsive, uploading it onto the required platform, and promulgating protocols could easily consume most of the 30 days by itself. Sure, Bill, but you're missing the main point. Bondi said she had all of it on her desk in February. Then they said this review, this process was happening March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. The reason the law had to be passed was because they had to force the production that the DOJ had already done and said that they completed. That's the thing about this Trump regime and how deceitful that they are, because they try to play people like they're stupid, and corporate news isn't going to cover it the way that I just did. And it's important that we push back, and why I give you the details that I did. But notice that Donald Trump calls in his hatchet man, Bill Barr, to do that dirty work. Let me just talk to you about what went down this past week, though, where the MAGA Republicans is also, as part of their cover-up scheme, as Donald Trump's dark past gets out there, is they focus on Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, hold Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton in contempt. Chairman Comer blasts the Clintons' unreasonable demands to evade contempt. They believe their last name entitles them to special treatment. No, release the freaking files. And then we can see who the hierarchy of people who should be deposed. You want to know who's top on the hierarchy before the Clintons, in my view? Ghislaine Maxwell, who now apparently was willing to speak with Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney turned number 2 at the Department of Justice, but now she's not going to come in for a deposition, or she's going to invoke the Fifth Amendment when she lied through her teeth to Todd Blanche, now that she has to come under oath. And by the way, if you want to take a deposition of Clinton, then take the deposition of Donald Trump. Trump's relationship with Epstein was far more extensive than Clinton, but you just focus on Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Why? Because you're partisan hacks. That's why. And you don't care about the truth. All you care about is using the Oversight Committee, Comer and your ilk, to cover up Donald Trump's wrongdoing and his horrible, horrible behavior. By the way, Donald Trump's been found civilly liable of sexual abuse. Donald Trump is on audio bragging that he grabs women by their vaginas without their consent because he's rich and you get away with it. He's on tape bragging about sexually assaulting women. He's on tape bragging about how he looks at the girls naked during beauty pageants, because he inspected them naked, and that's what you do when you're the inspector of the beauty pageant. Sick, depraved stuff. And then he goes, that wasn't my signature on the letter to Epstein. I never wrote that. Just a time traveler wrote the letter and planted it in the Epstein files. We have all those emails with Epstein and Ghislaine before Donald Trump was ever in office or running for office, talking about all of Donald Trump's horrific conduct in real time with them. We know all of this stuff.
Before I found Noble, I never really thought about how vulnerable my luggage actually was. But seriously, do you ever think about how easy it is to break into your suitcase? You're constantly leaving it with hotel staff, airline employees, or tossing it in the overhead. And get this, a simple ballpoint pen can pierce most luggage zippers in seconds. Then they just re-zip it and it looks untouched. That's your passport, laptop, meds gone before you even land. That's why
Stream
I'm
Element
obsessed with
says,
Noble.
find
Noble
me in other
completely
places,
removes
Discord,
the zipper.
Twitter,
It's a zipperless
YouTube,
latch-lock
Steam,
suitcase that
Xbox, and
closes
PlayStation
like a
Old
safe.
Mage Guy on
The two
TikTok as
halves
Mage.
meet with a tight seal. You actually hear and feel the click when it locks. No more stressing out every time your bag's out of sight. And if you're like me and always pack your best clothes on vacation, losing that wardrobe would be devastating. Noble isn't just the safest luggage out there. They have fixed everything that used to drive us crazy about travel. A built-in charging port keeps your phone alive at the gate, so no more crouching next to a random outlet for 5%. The front laptop pocket makes TSA a breeze. You can avoid those mini panic attacks when the line stares at you. And my favorite part, a flip-out cup holder built right into the luggage. Total game changer when you're juggling a coffee, water, and boarding pass.
Is what Democratic Congress member Robert Garcia had to say. Play this clip.
Taylor Greene on this committee reported that Trump told her that he wanted to continue his cover-up because, quote, my friends will get hurt. Donald Trump is leading a White House cover-up right now of the Epstein files. And we all know that Epstein himself said that Donald Trump was his best friend for over 10 years. And it is shameful, illegal, and unconstitutional that the Department of Justice has released 1% of the files. 1% of the files. Where is the pressure to get Pam Bondi to release the files? Instead, you're focused, and the committee's focused, on whoever you perceive to be your enemies, and the enemies of Donald Trump. Because let's be clear, we want to talk to President Bill Clinton. We want him to answer our questions. We also want Ghislaine Maxwell to answer our questions. We also want to understand why Pam Bondi refuses to release all the files. 1% of the files have released. Millions have been left. No publications for weeks. That is a crime. And so this White House cover-up continues every single day that the files are not released. And yet, where are those calls, Mr. Comer? You're saying they're complying. That is both a lie and shameful.
And here's what Democratic Congressmember Walkinshaw from Virginia had to say.
And if we're truly serious about justice, we can't ignore one of Epstein's most well-documented associates, President Donald J. Trump. We have documented communications, including a signed birthday note from Donald Trump containing explicit sexual references and referencing wonderful secrets between them. Emails from Epstein saying that Trump, quote, knew about the girls. Donald Trump acknowledging he knew Epstein was a, quote, creep and that Epstein recruited girls and women from Mar-a-Lago. Trump saying he wants to cover up the files because, quote, my friends will get hurt.
Okay. I just happened to be going through Twitter, and I already knew about the White House post with the AI-generated penguin and Trump walking through Greenland. But then the White House posts in a note on that picture, with that picture saying embrace the penguin. First off, there are no penguins in Greenland. Period. There's no penguins in Greenland. That's quite literally someone needing to learn their science. And the White House sits here and posts again as a comment on top of it. The penguin does not concern himself with the opinions of those who cannot comprehend. Excuse you? The one lacking comprehension at this point is you. Never mind the fact that... Here, let me show you the picture. I'm sure I can see this. I can actually show you guys properly. And that's the footprints from both of them. Supposedly. If anyone knows anything about penguins even slightly, you'll know that those are not the footprints of a penguin. And that those are not the footprints of a human. So, yeah, doesn't concern himself with those who can't comprehend. So it doesn't concern, the penguin doesn't concern itself with you fucks?
Resentful Morbidity Todo 3H says, at Old Magagai Viewers Streamboo. Remove the space.
Bro, don't do that shit. You know nobody likes that shit. You know you get banned from every channel you do that in. You're making money for being an idiot. Literally. You're going to force streamers to lose their ability to stream. Because that is against TOS. Have a nice day. Hey, it may be accurate, doesn't make it not true. There's a little community note that was added to it from Twitter. Note suggests context to be shown within the post misleading. Trump is unable to walk in a straight line. Now, if you've watched him walk anywhere, you'll know that, yeah, he can't walk in a straight line. I'm not mocking, I'm being real. I mean, if you're going to sit there and do that, at least make sure you know what fucking animal you're dealing with properly. I like that. There's people that have sat here and taken that same image and done things like this. Credit to these people. Come on, adjust. Turn down. Yeah, there's reflection. I'm sorry about that. Penguin holding a shovel saying, "It's done." And yeah, all of us could use that right now. Because that's ridiculous. Play home. But yeah.
If we're
It's
committed
like-
to transparency and
It's like that. Should be fucked y'all. And not a little. Hell, right now the last thing we're worrying about is international terrorism. We've got homebrews right here, being controlled by Donald Trump, breaking every single fucking law. That's why.
Now you'll probably hear me better. Fucking people. Well, not just people, but ignorant people. People who want to sit there and go, I'm better than somebody else. Ain't none of us better than each other. A lot of us make better decisions and actions than the likes of Donald Trump. Let's be real. There are many Trump supporters that make better actions and decisions than Donald Trump. For you Trump supporters, yes, you're smarter than your fucking leader. You're sitting here bowing to somebody who ain't shit. He couldn't help you out on the ranch. He couldn't help you on the oil rig. He couldn't help you on the farm. He couldn't sit there and do any fucking physical labor to help you. If he was in your team, he'd be dead weight. Actually, he'd be more than that. He'd be a detriment to your team. Because when someone is that self-absorbed, they're going to do everything they can to take credit, to look like the good guy, because they're not. Good guys don't have to take steps to look good. They just do it. Good guys don't have to take the time to cover shit up, because they don't do that shit. I'm sorry. This is both common sense and critical thinking. If you're still supporting Trump, you lack both of those. Period. End of discussion. There's no two ways around that. You're not stupid, but you're sure as fuck not using your head. And you have one. You're instead letting your emotions run your fucking asses. And grow the fuck up. Seriously, if us autistic or autism spectrum people have to sit here and grow up and manage our emotions, you fucks do too. The thing is, y'all are the maladaptive. And no, I'm not talking out my ass. I actually have 30 years of experience, proof, and work in psychology to say it. I am the leading in psychology currently. And you know what? The amount of people that are still stuck on the stupid bullshit that you all are following is ridiculous. It's also a mental illness. It's a literal mental virus. And y'all have fallen for it. It doesn't help that you were predisposed to it. We all were. A lot of us just said, no, that shit's not right. That's not how you fucking act. Y'all? Nope. Didn't even take a moment. Just said, oh, Mom and Dad said this is how it was. No. Getting your ass beat because you weren't a kid, because you wouldn't sit still, because you weren't quiet, that's not normal. That's not just how it was. That's what they did. They didn't know any better, but that's what happened. It doesn't minimize it. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It doesn't mean you didn't suffer from it. And if you're not willing to accept that, if you're not willing to accept that you suffered from that shit, that's an issue. That's a problem you're already dealing with. That right there is proof of it. I mean, one of the weakest pieces of proof of it, but proof of it still. Twats out here thinking ego is a fucking personality trait. No, it's not. It's a sickness. And guess what? You can open a DSM-5 and that one's actually in there already. The thing is we were, as a species, we're stupid and didn't sit there and go, oh, wait a minute. Neurotypicality and narcissism line up. Fucking idiots.
Justice, why is that off limits for this committee? Why is his name absent? Why no discussion of Attorney General Bondi's refusal to comply for months with this committee's subpoena? Why no contempt for Attorney General Bondi? What we're witnessing today is not oversight, it's not accountability, it's part of a cover-up, a diversion. And it didn't start today. Despite clear legal requirements in a law that Donald Trump signed, a subpoena that you signed, Mr. Chairman, and repeated public promises Attorney General Bondi has failed to release the files. It's entirely within her control, and yet only 1% has been produced, more than a month late. And even that sliver is so heavily redacted that it mocks the law. It mocks the law.
Yeah, it does.
And it mocks this committee's subpoena. And let's be honest about the transparency that Attorney General Bondi has provided. This is DOJ Epstein data set number 4. It's number 4.
Black page, black page, black page, black page.
Data set number 4. This is part of the 1% that folks have been talking about this today. I'll close with this. Attorney General Bondi and the Trump administration missed their deadline. They're ignoring our subpoena. They've withheld 99% of the files, and they have obscured the little that they did release. It's not a coincidence. It's intentional. It's about protecting one man, Donald J. Trump, from accountability. Release the files. I yield back.
And here's what Democratic Congress member Ted Lieu from California had to say. Play this clip.
Responsible for helping to ensure the rule of law. Unfortunately, the chairman of this committee ignored a bipartisan congressional subpoena directed at him. His actions have made it harder for this committee and other congressional committees to get witnesses and testimony and damage the rule of law. Now, before I ask questions of Mr. Smith, I just want to make a simple observation. How scared are Republicans of talking about the Epstein files? They're so scared that they literally are calling Jack Smith the distinguished federal prosecutor who secured multiple indictments against Donald Trump with multiple felony counts. Republicans would rather talk about the criminality of Donald Trump in trying to steal an election and trying to stop the peaceful transfer of power, and the criminality of Donald Trump in stealing classified documents of obstructing justice than about Donald Trump's associations with Jeffrey Epstein and his pedophilia ring. I demand this committee, this chairman, and Republicans to call an immediate hearing asking why the Department of Justice is refusing to release 99% of the Epstein files and why the DOJ is violating the law right now.
And then Donald Trump sends his right-wing sycophants like Scott Jennings this week to do CNN and to try to spread these lies. Hat tip to Lee McGowan, who's on the Midas Touch Network. I think she was channeling all of us right here. Let's play this clip.
They should follow the law, but let's not get our knickers in a twist here. There's no
let's not
punishment
get our
for
knickers in a twist over child rape. Why are you talking like that? It's insane. Like, it's insane. The Epstein Files
What's
is
insane?
a multinational, multi-generational child and woman sex trafficking ring. So your attitude right now, you're sort of like, well, shucks, devil begun, is just horrifying to me. Every woman in the world that is watching this,
he says,
why are you acting like you have no idea what's happening here? Scott, this is...
He asked me a question about following the law.
And what
I
I'm
said they
saying
should
to you
follow
is
the
your
law.
attitude. Yeah, and they're not following the law. They're 30 days late on following law, and they didn't explain why they redacted the first things in the first place, which they were also supposed to do.
I know.
Listen,
you
at
have
this
a strong
point, this is
opinion
not...
about it, and
I have a strong
respect that.
opinion
No,
about
no,
it
no,
because
that's
it is a
facts.
disgusting
I think they should do it
policy
as
that they are
fast as
doing
they
this.
can.
They are hiding it. It is not the behavior of innocent people, and everything that is in these files it could bring an entire house down. And if it has to, it has to. If it brings down Democrats, bring them down. If it brings down Republicans, bring them down. If it brings down princes, world leaders, Hollywood people, bring them down. But what it feels like right now is that there's a giant cabal of people that do not have to listen to the law, do not have to oppose the law, and they were supposed to do something, then they didn't do something, and now they're trying to have a new law that says we don't even have to do it. And what's really...
And then on CNN, they did a good segment, actually, where they said how if Donald Trump is trying to cover up the Epstein files with Greenland, he's not doing a good job. Play this clip.
There's been a suggestion among some that one of the things the president is trying to do by focusing on Greenland is maybe to distract from other things. With us now, CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton. So how much are people focused on Greenland opposed to other things?
Yeah, okay, so this is the whole idea, John. The President of the United States didn't like the focus on the Epstein files. We're going to change the subject and we're going to go over to Greenland. And from that perspective, it's worked. Look at this, Google searches versus December. For the Epstein files, down through the floor, far fewer people are searching.
I'm wondering this guy's political affiliation now. Because I'm sorry, that one thing I cannot get behind is gays for Trump. Seriously. I don't know which gay guy needs to hear this. Trump thinks you're disgusting as fuck. He finds you to be a sin against humanity. What part of that do you not understand? Seriously, what part of that do you not get? Same thing with blacks or Latinos for Trump. What part of he thinks you're the lowest living being on the planet do you not get? That's what I've got to say on that bit. Because I'm sorry. If you're any kind of a minority in supporting Trump, you're putting yourself at risk. Trump's not going to sit there and help you out. Like I said, he doesn't think well of people who are different. And that's putting it nicely. I mean, he sat there and made it to where his ICE and Border Patrol can just enter your house. And they're doing it to people, as I showed earlier on this fucking stream, right at the beginning. Y'all want to sit? Anyone who wants to sit here and say this shit ain't happening? I got one thing to say. Get off the fucking drugs. Put down the LSD. Put down the meth. Put down the heroin. Put down the fucking crack. And to those who actually are using those drugs and not supporting Trump, I apologize to you. Because, yeah, you guys aren't doing great for yourselves, but you're not supporting someone who would rather see you guys dead. And I've got a bit more respect for you guys in that regard than anyone who is a minority in supporting Trump currently. I would rather help out a fucking drug addict than anyone still supporting Trump. Completely and utterly. Don't get me started about the position I sit in right at this moment. I'm trying to work on those two. They are good people. They're Trump supporters because they don't know any better. They keep eating the fucking lies and thinking it's cake. And then when the lies get disproven, they get pissed. But they don't want to listen to the fact that, hey, guess what? It's been a lie the whole time. He fucked you over from day one of term one. Not this term. Hell, he's been fucking you over a lot longer than that, but that's beside the point. Y'all don't fucking get it. Donald Trump is not a self-made man. Donald Trump got what he's got first through inheritance from his fucking father to the tune of millions, of which he then lost. Has sat there and done real estate, bought casinos and bankrupted them. How the fuck do you bankrupt a casino? That's not a joke. The only way you bankrupt a casino is if you're taking funds from the business. Not profits, actual funds. The funds used to actually make it work. And that's just it. Casinos are pretty self-sustaining for money and creating sources. So I don't want to say why, because there's a good possibility that it was intentional. I hate to be this way, but dude has a long ass history of doing illegal shit. He has a long ass history of stiffing contractors that he's hired. Because he'll sit there, have the job done, and right before it's done, right before the bill, you're fired. So, of course, the contractors are still trying to get their money for the job done. What's Trump do? Takes it to court. Or I should say they take it to court. And in court, Trump sits there and has his little greasy fingers into everything. I don't think greasy's right. I think that's an insult to grease. But slimy's not right either, because that's an insult to slime. Demented. At least it's accurate. Donald Trump's demented little fingers into the courts, and he has for a while. That's kind of the thing about building up a reputation and being the best friend of someone like Jeffrey Epstein. You get quite a bit of contacts. And for anyone who wants to sit there and say Donald Trump wasn't Epstein's friend, there is documented account of Donald Trump being Epstein's friend for more than 10 years straight. Not just friend, but best friend. That's not some passing glance. 10 years is not just a splash in the bowl. Not for a human life. That's a full-ass decade. So anyone who wants to sit here and tell me that Donald Trump wasn't involved with the shit on Epstein Island is literally lying. Or should I say, either lying or speaking misinformation. Because they were misinformed. I do need to give you guys the proper respect in that regard. I ain't happy with the way y'all are acting. I ain't happy with what y'all seem to think is part of your personality. Because ego is not personality. It's not even close. So nah, if you can't see through this shit now, I don't have anything nice to say about you. I'm not going to treat you like a complete piece of shit. Because that doesn't fix shit. That doesn't help you get out front of this nonsense. That doesn't help you get back to reality. And I'll be damned if this is something that any of us can do alone. I'll be damned if I'm just going to sit by and not say anything. It's getting to the point where I'm about ready to willing to have myself put in jail because of this shit. And I'm not going to do good in jail. I already suffer from CPTSD, as well as several other issues. Put me in lockup? That's not a good idea. Not at all. And honestly, I'm going to be 100%. fucking anyone was breaking my door down like that, they weren't denouncing themselves whatsoever, yeah, I'd have my fucking gun drawn. And shooting the dumb of everything that came through that fucking door after that point. Because if you're trying to battering ram my door down, and you have not announced yourself, you're nothing more than an invader. You're nothing more than a burglar. And by Castle Doctrine, your death is your own fault by entering my premises. It doesn't matter if you're quote-unquote law enforcement or not. You did not identify yourself whatsoever. You just decided to break in a door. And guess what? That's a good way to get dead, dumbasses. See, Americans kind of have this thing about guns and protecting their private space, which is supposed to be protected by law. And y'all ain't supposed to be able to just do that without a proper judicial warrant. Your I-205 shit, that's not acceptable. That's not enough. That is not accountability. This is literally and 100% malevolent. Or sorry, not malevolent, that's the wrong word. People filled with malice and hate. Because let's be real, look at the way the shit with Renee Good went. Everything says that no, she wasn't trying to run anybody over. That I still had the ability to fucking move on. But no, instead they fucking shot her in the face. As she was trying to do as she was told. So, no. Ain't nobody supporting this shit has an excuse. Freaking mom and dad? Well, at least mom doesn't support this shit. She's not okay with it. It's actually beginning to piss her off. And I wish she'd actually take it and realize that, hey, there's more there, and you're just not seeing it. Because you refuse to have anything to do with politics. I'm sorry, but you don't get a choice. Because it's not politics anymore, it's your fucking life. And by continuing to support Trump, you're putting it at risk. Plain and fucking simple. There's no two ways around with that one, and it's backed by fucking data. Evidence, proof, video accounts. So no, there is no fucking excuse anymore.
For the Epstein files down 72%. Of course, you can't fall any lower than down being 100%. Versus for Greenland, look at this, the highest on record, up like a rocket, almost up 1,600%. My goodness gracious. So if the idea was to distract from the Epstein files and focus the American people on something else, it has been a success by that metric.
But we don't know if that was the goal here, but if it was. Now, how is saying focus on Greenland opposed to the Epstein files in terms of focusing on an issue that's good for you?
Yeah, okay. So if this was the idea, right, well, it's a bad idea politically speaking. Why do I say that? Because take a look here. Trump's net approval rating on the Epstein files, look at that. Just absolutely awful. 38 points below water. But any try to buy Greenland is somehow even more unpopular. Look at this. It's 40 points below water. There is barely an issue out there that's worse for
Why do you think it's hard for that to be possible, or even something that should be considered as out of the normal? If anything, the fact that he's trying to buy Greenland is the part that's out of the normal.
Donald Trump than the Epstein files, but any attempts to buy Greenland or use military force on Greenland, which even polls worse than this, is one of them. It is.
I wonder fucking why.
Arguably the most unpopular thing that Donald Trump can try to do is mess with Greenland.
So Greenland is polling worse than the Epstein files.
You got it.
There you have it, folks. We'll keep you posted every step of the way. Hit subscribe. Help us get to 6 million subscribers. And thank you all so much for watching. New Midas.
Okay, I need to restart the computer. So, I will be back.